Okay, so I've had some time to sit and think about everything that happened this past weekend with the Go Tour event, and I'm starting to feel like Pokemon Go is reaching a point where even the free to play events like the Go Tour event are becoming a major scam. And I think it's all because of one particular thing, RNG. Because of the luck based mechanics within Pokemon Go, a lot of players are going to end up feeling very frustrated. They're going to feel very disheartened if they do not get what they want after spending a boatload of money. And I think this is a major problem that has always persisted with Pokemon Go, and I think there's many solutions that Niantic should now explore, especially when Pokemon Go is in its current state. Alright, so how's it going everyone? Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. So this is going to be a more of an open discussion video. I kind of wanted to just share some of my thoughts and then hear some of the things that you have to say as a community. So after I talk, make sure you go in the comments down below and say your piece regarding everything that I'm going to be talking about. So the thing that I wanted to explore is RNG in Pokemon Go. In case you didn't know, RNG stands for Random Number Generator, and it's typically the acronym that players used for luck-based mechanics. There's plenty of different games out there that have RNG mechanics. Of course, pretty much every single gacha game is an RNG-based game. And then when it comes to certain games like TCG Pocket, like for example, you get random cards with every pack that you open. You may not necessarily get the card that you specifically want, and when it comes to the battling, there's a lot of different mechanics that involve flipping coins and different things like that. So yeah, I would consider that also an RNG-based game. But when it comes to the luck factor in a game like TCG Pocket, it feels incredibly different compared to Pokemon Go. And I think the main reason for that is because when it comes to Pokemon Go, it really depends on your own personal luck. There is nothing that protects you from having a string of bad luck. Even a game as predatory as Raid Shadow Legends, like it's very blatantly a pay-to-win game with a lot of monetization mechanics, and I know this because that's the game that I play outside of Pokemon Go, believe it or not. But the thing is, with Raid Shadow Legends, there's a lot of different mechanics that they have implemented where they call it a mercy system, where if you're pulling a bunch of shards to get certain characters, and let's say you have a string of bad luck, well, after a certain point, you're almost guaranteed to get something of value. And I feel like Pokemon Go is missing this because when it comes to Pokemon Go, a lot of the RNG mechanics are based around shiny Pokemon as well as appraisals. Like if you're doing a whole bunch of raids, the typical thing that you would want is a perfect appraisal of that Pokemon along with its shiny form. And I think the most valuable version of every single Pokemon is always going to be the Shundo, which is a perfect appraisal and it just happens to be a shiny. And I feel like for a lot of players, it's something that is always going to be out of reach because if you actually do the math, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to get yourself a Shundo from a raid battle, for example. But there's plenty of players who have gotten it, and that's simply because they get incredibly lucky. But there's really no way for you to get one, like outside of just being incredibly lucky. Like, you might as well go out and play the lottery. They say that you're never gonna win the lottery unless you play it. So, I do feel like a lot of the same mentality goes into Pokemon Go. Like when it comes to the game's design, there is really nothing there outside of your own personal luck. If you're someone who tends to have a lot of bad luck in life, you're probably not going to get a lot of things that someone who is incredibly lucky will be able to get within a short period of time. There's plenty of players that I know that have a ton of 100% IV legendaries and they have a whole bunch of Shundos in their collection. And they've spent maybe a fraction of the amount of money that I've spent over the history of me playing Pokemon Go. And it's really because they just happen to be incredibly lucky. It seems like every time they do a lucky trade, they come out with a Pokemon that is at least 98%, whereas I will come out with a Pokemon that's maybe closer to the minimum IVs that it could get. And that tends to happen more often than not. I don't necessarily believe it's because I personally have bad luck. I just think that because the game is designed the way that it is, it's going to be incredibly unfair because some players are just going to get better luck than others. But I really do think that there's a lot of things Niantic could do to level the playing field, and it's something that pretty much every single other game, especially those that are successful, have already implemented. Yeah, there's a lot of things that Niantic have done to increase your odds at getting yourself the best of the best Pokemon, but I really do think they need to add more. I really think what would benefit this game is a bad luck protection sort of mechanic. And I'm talking about something like, let's say you do a certain number of raids without getting a shiny. Well, your chances of getting a shiny are going to get better and better the more raids you do after a certain point. That is basically like a mercy system. It's a system where if you're someone who just has a huge string of bad luck, eventually you'll still be able to get something that you want. Like, if you've had a major shiny drought like the one that I experienced over the entirety of the GO event, then eventually you will get a shiny, so you just have to keep at it, because once you reach a certain threshold, the chances of you getting a shiny are going to continuously increase. I like that sort of idea for Pokemon Go because I think one of the things that I've realized when it comes to different events, especially like the GO event, you do see a lot of players experience burnout because maybe they're playing in a group of friends and one of those friends are constantly getting a bunch of shinies, whereas they end up getting no shinies throughout the entirety of the event experience. I've certainly felt that in the past when I would play with friends. Nowadays, I tend to play alone because a lot of my friends do not play Pokemon Go anymore, unfortunately, and a lot of my local communities, I tend to not to mingle too much because I'm going to be focused on filming and different things like that. So for a lot of these major events, I tend to just go solo and then just meet up with people after. But I do feel like back in the day when I would play with large groups of players, there was always that one or two players that would always get the shinies, and the rest of us would just always have bad luck. And I really do think this is something that is just, it could, like, I just feel like Niantic needs to add more control. Like, just leaving it up to chance is going to create so much chaos. And I really do think that for a game like Pokemon Go, it would greatly benefit from having bad luck protection, because for a lot of that burnout that players experience, a lot of that can be prevented if Niantic were to implement a system that would essentially guarantee you a shiny after a certain point. And yeah, it wouldn't be cheap, because going back to the Raid Shadow Legends example, like if you want to get yourself a legendary champion, you have to open up a lot of different, you have to spend a lot of money basically, or just spend an exorbitant amount of time in the game. But eventually you will get it. It doesn't matter like if you're just an extremely unlucky person or you're someone who just, really doesn't have a lot of things going your way, like you'll still be able to get it. That's the nice thing about it. It's just as long as you're diligent, as long as you're constantly spending, you will eventually get what you want. That's how that game is designed, and I think it works well, because for the whales, people who are willing to spend all of that money, they're going to end up getting what they paid for. And that's the key thing. If you're someone who is spending money in a game, like, you should eventually get what you're paying for. And I feel like that's the problem with Pokemon Go, is that even the people who are spending tons of money every day, every week, they're spending hundreds, thousands of dollars every week on raid passes, and then they don't end up getting a shiny. Or maybe their aim is to get a Shundo of a particular Pokemon, but they spend all this money buying raid passes in order to get that Shundo. And then they don't end up getting it, even though they do hundreds or even thousands of raids compared to the player next to them. And that player next to them, without having to spend that much money, maybe they don't even spend any money, they just use their free daily raid pass every single day, and they end up getting the Shundo. Just imagine how that person who has spent thousands of dollars feels. I'm not saying that Niantic needs to cater to whales, and I totally recognize that if you're someone who spends that much money in this game, that's really on you, that you're willing to spend that much money and you don't end up getting what you want. I know there's going to be players out there who are going to, not really fault Niantic for that. I totally get that. But I do feel like even for the average player who doesn't spend any money in this game, or people who spend very minimally in this game, maybe $20 here and there, like, I just feel like there needs to be something that will allow every single player to eventually get what they want. It's a way for them to build up towards something. And I feel like that's something that Pokemon Go has been missing for pretty much since the beginning, is that there's really nothing in this game that really gives you a sense of player control. It's just almost entirely luck-based, and I just really do not like that. I just do not think it's really good design. And I totally get it. Maybe the reason why Pokemon Go is what it is today and the reason why it has survived for so long is because of those RNG mechanics, because it is basically a slot machine game, right? Like if you want 100% IV legendaries, or let's say there's a particular Pokemon that you want a shiny for, you have to continuously roll the dice. You have to continuously hit the slot machine and eventually you'll hit it. And I do understand why Niantic has it set up that way, because yeah, that is a great way for them to have not only longevity with Pokemon Go, but also a way for them to generate a ton of revenue. Because if there's going to be players out there who are desperate for, let's say, a Shundo Mewtwo, anytime Mewtwo comes out, they're going to just completely drain their savings in order to get that Shundo Mewtwo. Maybe they'll just amass a whole bunch of shiny Mewtwo's and just try to get lucky trades with their friends. And lo and behold, recently they introduced the Lucky Trinket that allows players to actually pay for that, but it's still all left to random chance. So I really do think there needs to be something. I really do not know what that solution could be. I'm suggesting they do like a bad luck protection system, like a mercy system. Other players have suggested just simply adding bottle caps into the game. Give us a way to actually increase the IVs of our Pokemon so that if you want a Shundo in your collection, you can get it just simply through hard work. Maybe they could go that way. I really do not know. But after this past weekend, I just felt like the most of it was just spent feeling very drained. It was mostly spent feeling very disheartened and very burnt out, because as many raids as I was doing, I was just simply not getting a single shiny, and it just came down to bad luck. And I really wonder if it's because Niantic adjusted the shiny raid specifically for this event, because they anticipated that players would be doing a whole bunch of these Kyurem raids. I feel like that would be incredibly shady, because they set a precedent for so many years that raids are going to produce shinies at a rate of about, I think it's 1 in 20 for legendaries, or 1 in 15. But regardless, players were raiding assuming that the shiny rate would be something close to that, and they ended up spending way more than they needed to because they were not getting the shinies. I mean, I saw it in the comments for my vlog videos for Go Tour. There were plenty of you who had a very similar experience to me, where you did close to 80 raids, 85 raids, 100 raids even, and you only walked out with one shiny, or some players just simply did not even get a single shiny. I was lucky enough to get, I think in total, 3 shinies out of doing about 120 raids. Like, it's crazy that the game is like this. I know it's been this way for several years, but that doesn't make it okay. I really do think at this point in the game, Niantic needs to come up with something, because more and more players are starting to get burnt out. There are players that I know who have been chasing after even just a 100% IV Mewtwo for the past several years, and any time Mewtwo comes out as a raid boss, they just emptied their wallets trying to get raids done for Mewtwo. And up until this day, they still do not have their 100% IV Mewtwo. And there's players out there who got it on day one. The first time Mewtwo was released with EX raids, they ended up getting a hundo. And they didn't spend that much money to get it. They probably didn't even spend any money to get it. Maybe they got lucky with the EX raid invite, and then they did their Mewtwo raid, and then it happened to be 100%. That's a pure RNG-based mechanic story, and I just simply do not like that. I really do not like that. That doesn't make the game exciting. That doesn't make you getting these kind of Pokemon that special. It just makes it so that it just shows how lucky you are as a person. It doesn't show how accomplished you are as a person. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, this is just my sentiment. I just feel like this past Go Tour event was definitely very disappointing for me, but it still had its moments, and yeah, I don't feel like just because I had bad luck doesn't make it a very bad event. I just feel like the RNG mechanics are just something that produces just way too much chaos in this game. Like, I really feel like there needs to be something that you can just work towards if you want it. So yeah, that's just my thoughts and opinions on this whole thing. I know it's completely subjective. I know there's going to be players out there who are going to completely disagree with me, and that's totally okay. But I would really like to know your thoughts. If that happens to be you and you feel like everything that I'm saying is just complete BS, then definitely share your reasons why you think that down below in the comments, because I'm really curious to see what people are saying when it comes to the RNG mechanics in Pokemon Go, because like I said, it just feels like this past weekend was a huge scam. The amount of raids that I ended up doing, way more than I intended to. Like, I just feel like Niantic nickel and dime me. It just simply feels that way. And I feel like a lot of players feel the same way, because maybe they went into it thinking it would be just like a raid day, and maybe they just thought that with the raid passes that they already had in their bank, that was enough to get themselves at least one shiny. And what they ended up having to do was raid close to 100 to get even one shiny. That's, in my opinion, just ridiculous game mechanics. But yeah, that's just my own personal opinions. Definitely share yours down below, and hopefully we can have a great civil discussion on this topic. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe if it's your first time here, and that little bell, make sure you click it so that you stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And real quick, let me give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel and all the discussions that I do, then do consider joining my Patreon. If you become a paid Patreon member, I will add you to my Pokemon Go friends list. So that means for stuff like remote raids and the friendship system, if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way, you're always welcome to do so by following me on social media. I'm on the platforms that you see on the bottom of your screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow, and you'll have access to some exclusive content. That's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, and love yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.